Yeah, okay, good morning everybody. Welcome to the payments update webinar. You should all be able to see the first slide on the screen there. Got quite a few already logged on, so I think we'll get started straight away. We are going to try and record this session, so for those of you or other partners who aren't able to dial in, they can revisit it. And we'll also be sending out a note tomorrow to summarise some of the content. Okay, so this session is really important. We want to give you an update on where we are with payments and give you some confidence that we've resolved the majority of issues, and also acknowledge some of the remaining points that we need to focus on it, and give you some information about what work we're doing in the background with those issues, like the business process report and some of the retention rate points. So we're going to cover off some of those points. And before we start, I really want to thank two groups of advisors. One is the group that was involved in the validation work that we did. There was 40 advisors that were involved in that, and their very honest and constructive feedback to us throughout that process helped us make sure that we delivered the results that we're going to share with you today. And also, I'd like to thank PAG for their representation of advisors. They've been very sort of vocal and vociferous and made it very clear what the key issues are for you guys out in the field, and it's helped us very much prioritise some of the work that we've been doing and identify those key issues. Clearly, we're not saying everything's all sorted, but you'll see through the session today, which should take about 35-40 minutes to present, and then there'll be questions, that we've come a long way, and there is evidence that we're now processing in a business as usual situation. So we're just going to cover those bits off. For those of you that have been on these sessions before, always go through some housekeeping to make sure it's running okay. So if you could just raise your hands to confirm you can hear me okay, that would be very useful. Okay, we've got a good response there. And then quick second one is if you can see the slide PS Advisor Payments Update, Joe Prince and Billy Jack on there as well. Excellent. Excellent. Okay, so just to add, we'll do questions at the end. You can ask a question at any point in the session, but we will go through the slide deck first and then do questions at the end. If technology allows, Andy Thompson will be on the line as well for questions. So we just need to make sure that Newcastle can link to London okay, and make that all work. Okay, so we'll get started. Okay. So, what are we trying to do today? So first thing is we want to provide you with an update on the current status, give you some of that confidence that the payments are now flowing and they're flowing through as normal. We are going to outline some of those outstanding issues that are still there and still niggling, and that we really want to resolve and help you get through, and give you an outline of those plans to resolve them. So it's really important that we share all this information with you. The first thing is we looked at this from, and we talked through this with PAG as well, from an advisor's perspective, and we kind of broke it down into three questions really that you kind of want answering, and you've probably asked yourselves and answered these questions for yourselves through the last few months. So, are you getting paid in a timely manner? First question. Am I getting paid all my payments that I used to get on TP, which is obviously key to us closing off that data migration and that validation piece from the True Potential work? And am I paying the correct retention rate that I signed up to? So that's the other question. So paid timely, all the same payments that you used to get, and is it correct? So they're the key things that we're going to try and show today. And Billy's with me to help us do that. Over to you, Billy.
Good morning, everybody. I think what we need to do first of all is define what a timely manner is. when we receive monies from providers, we cannot process that money until we have the detail of the statement. These two very seldom arrive in the same day. Sometimes we get the statement before the money, and sometimes it's the other way about. So one of the issues that we've had of late is that partners have been talking to providers who make statements around we have sent the money on a particular date, but we still cannot match that money to your account until we have the statement. So what we've done to have a look at this is to say what are our process rates within 5 days, 10 days and 30 days of receiving the money. So if you look on the right hand side, you'll see that we are processing 90% of the business, of the money that we've received within 5 days. That will mean that the statement will have come in any time from on the same day up to the 5 days. We're hitting 97% within 10 and 99% within the 30 days. The 1% will be where the statement has been sent somewhere else, we haven't received it, or it doesn't reconcile with the money and we're still talking to the provider. These figures are comparable with what we were achieving on TP. When we actually process the statement on the day, we are hitting levels of 89 and 90% of matching on the same day. This is actually higher than we were getting on TP. TP tended to be between 86 and 87%. The 10% that doesn't match on the day will go into suspense, and the majority of that will be new commissions where we haven't got the submission set up or we can't readily find that submission. As we lead into suspense, we now have a dedicated team which we didn't have before when we had the TP system. We left suspense management to yourselves, but we now have some dedicated people matching out suspense, and most of you hopefully will have had some of the proactive emails that we send on a fortnightly basis to remind you that you actually do have entries in the suspense file. Again, the vast majority of these are for initial payments, and it's as a reminder that we can't locate it for you. This graph shows that when we first went live with Officerev, you can see the spike where we were missing some data. We weren't matching at the rates that we had to match, and you can see it spiking up to about 500,000 around about September, and then you can see the graph coming down. And why we call this adjusted suspense is there's always an element of money goes into suspense for a while, and we've chased that back through TP, what used to go in, and we're actually matching ahead of that level now, which is why you see that we're now just over £100,000 less than what we would have expected to be in suspense. Ideally there will be nothing, but the reality is there is always something in suspense. On the suspense side, the claims that people make, the SLA for processing these is 48 hours, and we are normally hitting that within 24 hours. So again, we're turning these round as quickly as we're getting the suspense claims. Moving on to the queries, we obviously had a very poor experience in Q4 last year where we were not responding to queries in a timely manner at all. We have since introduced, early December, middle of December, we introduced the online query form, which has made a significant difference to how we are managing the queries. Just to remind people, if you haven't used the system that often, we've built in a lot of automated communication within it. So when you first log your query, you will get a response to say that it has been logged correctly. When the member of staff picks up your query, you will again get an automated response to say it's been picked up. We are aiming to get you the initial response to your query within 1 or 2 hours, and again that will be put on the notes section of the query system, and that would most likely to be saying we've contacted the provider or we need more information, something of that nature, and we're aiming to be coming back to you within 1 or 2 hours. And in the main, we're managing that. As we go through the queries, once a week, any unsolved queries are scanned to have a look to see if we have had a response from the provider. And again, the staff should update you again with saying we have went back to the provider again, or we need further information again. Whatever that next stage or iteration of the process is, and that should keep you in the loop. To be fair, we were having a couple of issues around the quality of the responses. We were giving you some detailed information back, and we are working with the teams to actually improve the quality and have some more standard responses, which are a bit more meaningful. So sometimes we've used some terminology which in the back office processing systems means something to ourselves, but it's not always evident to yourself. So on the queries, we are picking them up again within 48 hours, and of the ones that we've been looking at since we went live in December, the average, we're processing 75%, we're resolving them within 5 days. So that's not just responding to you, but that's actually resolving them. The ones that tend to take longer than that, we are going back to the provider, and it's, the providers don't always treat these as a priority. That's where our main issue is, and we're trying to get a better contact system with the providers for that. So, back to the initial question, was am I getting paid in a timely manner? 90% is being paid within 5 days of receipt from the provider. Again, we're at the mercy of receiving the statements. An example I've quoted on here, and it happened again yesterday, we did not have any monies and statements that we could process left after we closed for business on Friday and again last night. We have processed everything we had in-house that we could do. So we've got the money, we've got the statement, and the value's matched. When we do the processing, we are matching just under 90% first time, so on that same day, and we've got less money suspense now than we've ever had. So going on to the second question that Joe brought was, am I getting all the payments that I used to get on True Potential? This is where we had the 40 partners, and within the 40 partners we looked at any payments that the 40 partners had received in the last 3 months of when we had the TP system. This was just under 20,000 individual policy records. This wasn't installments, this was actually policy records. So we've taken them, we've then done a match against the Office web system, and we have found just under 83% of them either had been paid or were in suspense waiting to be paid. So that was without anything else we'd done. That's a straightforward lookup within the system. We were then left with just about 3,500 records, and we went back to each of the providers to ask, why have we no longer received the payment for these? So on this slide you'll see the typical one. We don't have the split down of this 17%, because it does initially feel like a high number, but these are because it's been rebroken on the platform. Standard normal cancellations or transfers, it could have just came to the natural end of the commission period, transferred to clean shares, or just lapsed. These are all fairly typical, and when we went back to the 40 advisors to explain this, sometimes they were a bit surprised, but actually they did agree with it, or they actually knew this was going to happen. So we've actually had no challenge whatsoever on any of these cases, which is good, giving us a bit of comfort that the providers we have been accurate. So when we come back onto this slide, as a week ago, we still had 32 outstanding payments we were trying to track. So that came from just under 20,000 down to 32. As at last night, it was actually 21. But we are actually falling through on every single one of these. Some of the feedback from the 40 partners, they were surprised because we were asking them information about some payments that were only to the value of 1 penny. And we did explain it wasn't the value that we were necessarily chasing, it was more the principle behind it. So they were a bit surprised. So we haven't cut this off as a minimum payment amount. We have looked at every single transaction that we could find. So having done that, we've also brought back in reports that you would have had on TP. I would imagine most of you have actually already taken your historical data, but we've had a few requests still to provide this. So we've put this back on. This will go live on Monday on the extranet. and you'll be able to just go in and run the reports as you used to do on TP, and this will give you the TP historical data. It may, for those who have already secured this information, this might just be a quicker, easier way for you to do this. So just to summarise again, we have now accounted for 99.95% of all monies received from the 40 advisors, just under 20,000 records. We've involved the partners through the whole stage. It took just over 2.5 months to complete that exercise, and it will be complete once we finish the last 21 cases, which we'd hope would be within the next week, but the numbers are coming down. 32 last week, down to 21. They're all confident now that the findings were all accurate, they understand them all, and you can now carry out, if you wish to do the same, you can do that same with the historical work that we've allowed. So we won't shut this part of this work down until we have accounted for these now 21 remaining payments. Yeah. When we took PAG through a version of this presentation last week, I think it was interesting, we had some feedback from some of the PAG members. This one sums it up fairly well. So I think there's a perception, and what we try to do is use the actual data that we have. There's always a perception that something may be happening, and it's understandable given what we came through from August, September, and through the rest of last year, that people still think they're maybe not being paid. This would be most people would not have done this on the TP system. They just accepted what they were being paid was fairly timely. But again, all of you will probably have chased payments on the TP system. We had a team in Newcastle continually chasing statements from providers and some queries on commission. So this whole query system is nothing new. We've always had it. I think it's been highlighted given the problems that we came through last August, September. So there will always be missing statements, and there will always be that we are chasing payments up. So the third question Joe had asked was, am I being charged the correct retention rate? Again, out of the same PAG meeting, Gordon's view was that he was part of the validation group, so he was already happy that he was receiving all the payments that he expected. And I think this sort of backs up a lot of the feedback we're getting. The main issues now is around the reporting and the retention rates. And a lot of the partners are very happy that they're receiving the monies. So again, this sums it up very well. So the background to this issue is anyone that's been through a rate change will experience the two following issues. The system does not apply the new rate to advisor charges. These are still coming through at the old basis. And then you will have heard in Andy's in the picture, we've actually talked about statements being stuck within the system. And when that happens, that then can alter the retention rate. So these are the two known issues. Back in November, when we made some changes to the reporting, we thought we had narrowed all the issues down, but we hadn't, which is why we went back through and we can now know that these are the only two issues that are here. So the advisors who have been through the rate changes, just over 200 have moved to the new rates. And at any point when you're due to have a rate review, you can move across, but if you don't want to move across to the new rates, you can wait until these issues have been resolved. And when we move you to the new rate, we will make that rate change retrospectively. So no one is actually going to lose out with the timing of this. It really depends on the individual partner. We've got about 70 decided just to wait until we've resolved the issues. There are just over 200 that have moved to the new rates. And what we've done is on a monthly basis, for the ones that have changed, we do a monthly reconciliation. So we've completed January, we've made any adjustments, we've communicated directly with each individual advisor, and we've now started February's reconciliation. That's going fairly straightforward, no new issues. But this is a good way of actually validating that we still only have the two known issues when the finance team carry out this reconciliation. And this reconciliation will continue on a monthly basis in a timely fashion until we have these issues resolved. So the real remaining Office Web challenges that we have is with the handling of the advisor charges. That's where we see most of the issue. So IRIS are working on this. The change that they're making is fairly substantial for IRIS, as it affects all the touch points that a charge would have within the system. We're on schedule. We had a meeting with IRIS on Friday. They are on schedule to deliver the changes to Intrinsic at the end of March. We have the testing resource and the plan set up to test. It will probably take us most of April because of the scale of the fix. Hopefully we can do it sooner, but we're just trying to manage expectations here. At the moment, the plans are saying it will take April to test, and then we will deliver this in May to advisors. The business process support. So this is going hand in hand with the work with IRIS, and this will eventually resolve itself by default, but what we are working on in the background is a contingency plan that if we can extract the data, we will produce reports outside of Office Web, and we know of some other businesses that have taken this approach. So we're doing some investigation work to identify all the required data. We can then also take the opportunity to customize them a bit more. So it's probably a compromise between the TP reports and the Office Web reports to get something that's a bit more user-friendly, taking on some of your feedback, and we'll be working closely with the PAG members to ensure we get this part right. We don't know for sure that we can actually do this outside, but that's what we're looking to do. We think that'll be a better option. The last remaining issue that we're working on is on the splits cases. And this is definitely taking longer than we had assumed. Some of the data just didn't transfer properly when we did the transfers back in July. And we were doing a piece of revalidation work, which the intention was that would finish mid-January and allowed us to be back with no issues after the end of January. It's taken longer, and we've only just completed this validation within the last couple of days. We have a number of partners who quite rightly have raised queries about the splits and the payments. We're now starting to pick these up and work through. What we won't do is just apply any adjustments automatically, because some partners have made the adjustments manually themselves, so they've either credited the other partner or the introducer. So you'll actually get some correspondence coming back to say, what do you want us to do? And we will make one-off adjustments as against individual ones. The number of queries that we've got left outstanding, we should be completing this within the next 2 weeks. So this one is definitely behind schedule, was internal. We just had to get this part right, which is the last part of the data validation. So just to summarise where we are with this part, so the advisors who have been through a rate change have been charged the correct retention rate. The reports don't always indicate that, but we are confident that the net amounts are correct. The advisors who have been through a rate change are receiving the reconciliation, so as that happens, we are crediting any monies or debiting any monies that need to be to reflect the changes. We've got the reporting errors we're looking to resolve, and the main thing that will make a difference will be when IRIS deliver the advisor charge changing. And we're working as internally as a priority to look at this contingency plan as an alternative for the business process support.
Okay, thanks Billy. So that's a sort of update on where we are with some of these issues. And before I open up to questions, just wanted to summarise. We've got some questions coming in, but please keep them coming. If you've got any more, that'd be great. So we've given you an update on the current status, and we've given you some of the detail and the evidence of the work that we've been doing to try and make sure that you've got confidence that the money actually is flowing. Whilst we acknowledge some of the remaining issues that we need to resolve, It's key that you, at the moment, if you understand that where you have been through a rate change, there will be issues, but the finance team are reconciling monthly to make sure that you're not disadvantaged and that you are getting charged the right rate. If you haven't been through a rate change, we are still seeing a number of, quite a large number of reporting errors, but these are not, when you look at the detail in the system, these are not actually incorrect retention rate errors, they're actually reporting errors. So if you have those and you're unsure and you don't know how to check, raise a normal query in the normal way, and the team can then check that, validate it, and make sure they go back to you to confirm what the situation is. It's important you do that for 2 points. One is that we can then validate to give you confidence that what we're saying is correct, and that we're not just making these things up, because we don't want to do that. And the second thing is, if something new does come along, because there are occasions when new things occur, then we identify it quickly. So go through the normal process, and we can pick those up very quickly. And we've outlined for you those outstanding issues that we need to address. We know that one of the biggest issues is that the reports don't reflect necessarily what you want to see. They don't reflect the correct gross and retained data, which is a real issue if you're going to have confidence in what we're saying. So we understand that, and that's one of the key things that we need to address. We also need to address the splits. Many of you might have been impacted by the splits issue, and Billy and the team there are working through that now. And if you haven't already, as part of that exercise, you should be contacted within the next couple of weeks to confirm the progress on that as well. The key sort of dates to remember that we're targeting, I mean, as with anything with IT, we say it with a degree of caution, but we are looking at, in terms of time frames, by May, we are hoping that the majority of these issues, particularly around advisor charges and retention rate issues, are actually resolved. So that A, we don't have to do monthly reconciliations for everybody on the change rate, but also B, and more importantly, that you start to see and get the confidence that those rates are flowing through correctly onto all business, not just commission. It's actually flowing through onto advisor charges as well. Okay. So again, before we go into questions, what happens next? So the next stage is going to be a broader communication to advisors that will summarise some of the points that we've made that will be sent out tomorrow. We have recorded this webinar, so providing the sound quality and the quality of the webinar is okay, we would look to make it available somewhere for reference. Then we have, should give you some confidence, we have an internal audit that will validate all the work that we've done planned for May, which is reporting to the main intrinsic board. So that is to sign off that all the data migration and the payments issues that we've had have been resolved and worked through in the correct manner, and that we've resolved them fully. And finally, then the next part of the timeline is that in July, advisors will receive their 1% rebate, and that is the kind of the timeline for closing these items off, both internally and with you, the partners. So we'll move on to some questions now. I've been reading them as we've come through, and some of them are fairly specific, but we'll try and deal with some of the more generic ones first. And just give me a quick second while
I'll pick up while Joe's speaking. I've looked at a couple of the questions. A couple of them around the query system, where you've indicated that it was a commission split query. You won't have received that automated response yet, but that's what we will be working through now, to be validated the data. We've had someone also say they haven't received the automated response. That's most likely that when you complete the query form, you actually state the email address, and it's probably just something as simple as having been miskeyed, because the system will actually use whatever's been keyed in there. And we ask for that to be keyed because it may be it's a PA or someone else that's actually doing it on your behalf. So we pick that up from there.
Got a question from Paul, who's saying that he's got outstanding payments where the providers definitely sent money to PS, dates and amounts that have not been forwarded to him. So we obviously need to raise that as a query, but what I would say is that we need to make sure that we have received the statement. So back to Billy's point, the money could be in our bank. It could well be in our bank. If we haven't got the corresponding statement that matches that we can reconcile again, then the team cannot pay that out. They can't pay that out. So we need to make sure that we've got both money and statement and make sure that flows through.
We would normally expect to have the statement within 5 days of receiving the money, which is why we have the 5-day SLA that we measure. And what we've also put in place now, which we didn't have in TP, we have people who, their job is basically to chase statements that are missing. And we start to chase them on day 4, because that seems about the right sort of point to do it. We didn't do that when we had the TP system. The only time we chased statements was when partners would chase for payment that we realised were missing. So we're actually ahead of the game again. The same as that when we are processing more proactively as suspense, but also chasing statements, hopefully before partners are chasing us.
Okay, we've got another question, which is why is provider contact worse now than with TP? I think this is we made some comments about getting in contact with providers. I don't think the provider contact is necessarily worse than with TP, but I think what it's worth acknowledging is that when TP dealt with the commissions, they had the provider commission team relationships rather than us. So we've had to do some building of that over the last 6 months, which is work in progress, and but it's in a much better position now, and we've got the right contact. So it's not a case that it's worse. It's just that it has been something that we've taken on because we'd never really had to do it in as much detail as before. The main relationship was via TP.
There's also been a change that someone, I think it's Chris, has asked about processing of checks. So when the check comes in here, it will wait the 3 days for it to clear the bank before that. So that's a change since we moved to the Office Web system. When they used to go straight to True Potential, then that was logged on our system as having been received, but it wasn't actually cleared. And we now just wait for that to be cleared. So you may see that couple of days for that clearance now, which wasn't there before.
Question here from Charles: how and why does the system take a retention of 100%? So, okay, so this is where I think this is referring to direct fees historically. So last year there was a lot of occurrences where direct fees were charged at 100%, and that was because of the original setup and upload of direct fees there was an error on that, which meant that there was no retention or 100% retention rate taken. So an exercise has been carried out which has resolved all of those, and new charges should not be charged at 100%. If you are seeing that new charges set up have been charged at 100%, then you need to raise a query and flag it, and we'll pick it up, because our understanding is that the historical ones have been fixed and the new ones should be charged at the same rate. So please, if you've got an example, send it in and we'll pick that up in the normal query process.
We've got one or two, like Robert's an example that he's changed to the new rates but not aware that a reconciliation has been carried out. So myself and Joe scan a lot of these to see if they're very individual based. And we'll contact finance or the relevant department. It's specific to yourselves for some of these.
got a point here, Robert, saying that he's changed to the, we'll need to double check this, Robert, but thanks for flagging. So you saying you've changed to the new rate on January the 1st, and you're not aware of any reconciliation. Well, that absolutely shouldn't be the case. So if you are on that list of people who've changed rates, then you should have received the reconciliation for January's business at some point in February. And if you didn't, then we'll investigate after this call in any case. Okay. Okay, so we'll just skim through a few of the others just to make sure we're not duplicating any answers, and then we'll come back to you in a minute or two. So Paul Eames, you raised a really important point, which is part of why we're running this webinar and also why we're doing all the other work in the background. But so Paul said, and I'll read it verbatim just so that everyone's clear. So I acknowledge you're working to fix these issues, but I still check every payment every day, even though I am told that I don't need to. In the main, most payments are made, and I unfortunately do not share your confidence yet. I'll find some issues every day. So, okay, so that's a really important point. So we've gone through the detail as to where we think we are, and also we know that there are issues on the reports that will highlight some issues that appear to be the case, but actually might not be. So Paul, we understand that confidence is the bit that actually is going to take a bit more time. It's not going to happen just by us running one webinar and saying that everything's flowing through. What we do know, and we can say with some confidence, is that monies now are flowing through and are matching to advisors at the same or better rate than they were with True Potential. So yes, individual advisors might see some errors and might see some missing payments. That is actually business as usual. That happens in day-to-day business. It happened under True Potential, and it will happen. And those items need to have queries raised. The issue we have, or the big issue that we have, is that the reports that you would normally use to identify real issues are not showing you the correct information in all cases, which makes it difficult for you to identify the real issues and the non-real issues. We get that, and that's why that's one of our major priorities. Billy, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, and I think it's partly down to, it's also the timing. When we say that we're paying in a timely manner, and sorry to reiterate this, but it's really important that we need the money and the statement, and we need them both to balance. And providers will consistently say they've already sent it, and they'll quote dates of either when it left their company and not necessarily when it came here. And if they don't send electronic statements, we still have a lot of providers who send paper statements. What happens is they get lost, they don't get here, and some of these just normal everyday hassles that we have with trying to match it up. So we totally understand why somebody would say the provider has told me I pay PS, they sent the statement, why is it not processed? And that's one of the biggest parts that we need to manage, is the expectations around that. So we know at the end of each day, we know what monies is left that has not been processed. As I said, on Friday, we had an example of there was nothing left that we could process on the system. I checked last night, again it happened. Sometimes there's an odd one left over because the statement arrives late in the day because it's electronic. We don't get everything at 9 o'clock in the morning. So the statements will flow into this building electronically or manually throughout the day. So it's one of the challenges that we've got. Hi, there's a good point here from Stuart. What we're looking to do is to build up details around the timings of when we expect to receive payments and statements, especially for the main providers. So there's a number that we know we either get monthly or weekly, and these will be substantial amounts. So we're looking to actually put something on the extranet to give you an indication, but more importantly, to indicate when we have not received one of these. So we typically know that Scottish Life pay on a Wednesday, and if there's an issue with that, we get queries because you guys understandably expecting that payment on the Wednesday. So we need to be a bit more proactive to say we've had an issue with the statement, it's not arrived, it's not balanced, or there's just a general issue, and it might be a following day before we can rectify that. And that will hopefully put your minds at rest that we are managing it correctly, we are in control of it, but also saves you the hassle of looking for it and raising a query. So it saves everybody. So we're looking to build up this piece of information, have it published.
So yeah, another question from Chris here, saying he's on the old retention rate, but there's some retention rate errors that he felt he had from previous months. He gave an example of the 100% charge. If you've got those errors from previous months and they've not been reconciled and rebalanced, then raise a normal query, and that should get resolved. One thing I would just to reiterate the messages from before, if you're looking at the business process report and you haven't changed rate, the net is right, and then the gross and retained figure is often wrong, and that's caused by caused by stuck statements, and that can be wrong for. Depends on your business spread, but it could be a large proportion of your business if you're looking at a month's worth of fees. So be wary of that, and if you're unsure, raise the query anyway. We can do a couple of spot checks and give you that confidence that the net amount is correct. But make sure you do raise that query. If there are errors, then we can reconcile that and give you a rebate if it's necessary.
So also worth stating that IRIS are looking at these stuck statement issues. So we're not just going to accept this as being business as usual. We need to remove that issue going forward. So there's diagnostics being put into the system to allow them to chase why that's happening. So we're hoping that will be resolved soon as well.
Dorothy, on TP we could produce a report showing fees and commissions over 12 months on a month-by-month basis without all the individual entries. I think I know which one you're talking about. So I don't think there's a specific report you can do that on Officeweb, but we will check that with Emma Jackson, who's the expert in that, and see if there is something that we can help you with on that point.
The other option would be, instead of getting the report, is to download the data, if you were happy to manipulate that yourself. So you can download it in a CSV or a spreadsheet, and then with doing some filtering, you could probably produce something like that if you don't have it to hand.
There's some questions here about advisor fees and VAT, which I'm going to defer, and I would suggest you raise those with finance for now. I don't think I can answer those questions. So Richard, I think you've asked one. If you drop an email or raise a query with finance and just ask that question.
We've also got a query around suspense. When the advisor name is against the case, if it's went to suspense, it means that we have not, the system hasn't automatically managed to find that policy record, or when the team have been looking for it, it's not been obvious to them which one, and what they don't want to do is to match it against a client record for the wrong case. These are the cases that I mentioned that the team will be more proactively looking for and sending reminders to yourselves. So So that should be happening. We tend to do that on a fortnightly basis, with most partners replying within a few days. So that again is something that's been working well.
Billy Charles has got a question. How long does it take to change to the new rate if he wants to? What's the process?
All we need to do is let finance know, and I think it's only a few days. It's a fairly standard process, but I'll find out for sure.
Neil Beattie's got a question saying he's got payments stating do not use in capitals on his statements. What is this? So this could be a number of things, but in most cases this is where an error has previously happened on a payment, and therefore we've had to create a new record in order to facilitate the correct payments. And that do not use one is the old incorrect record. So I think that's usually what that case is. Billy, are you aware of any other?
And you would only see that the ones that shouldn't repeat itself. So the first payment against it, that after any changes made, because we can't actually delete the invalid record, so we set it to do not use. So that would disappear the following month, or the next payment that comes along.
Andrew Martin's raised a point about we regularly don't get statements for AXA Life Europe, and that he has to regularly chase that. So that's probably one for us to just make a note of and see if there's a reason why that isn't coming through automatically, and if not, if we can add in the process that gets chased, because by the looking of your point. It's often 3 or 4 weeks before we get that statement. So that's one of those ones where providers are not necessarily doing us any favours, but we could definitely do more to be proactive and chase that.
We have a good contacts database for some of these aspects for the regular ones. But if that's a sort of less than regular, and once you go into providers, finding the specific area that deal with that can sometimes be a problem. But we do need to improve in that one.
A question from Roger about unpaid introducer fees and splits. It's a general one about splits. Billy, do you want to just have a look at that one?
Yeah, this is what we covered earlier, that we've revalidated the data that should have been loaded, made any corrections, and now we're working through the queries. So we will look back to see what splits should have been made from when we switched over on the 27th of July until we actually corrected the data. So we'll be in touch with each advisor who's raised a query that their splits were working correctly. Because we need to find out that a fair number of advisors have paid their introducers what they should have, because they've probably been paid 100%. They've then passed on the payment to that introducer, so there's nothing to change now, as long as they're comfortable that going forward the system is doing that automatically. So we will be coming back to your order on that.
Got a fairly specific question here on Aviva. Do Aviva send us paper statements? I don't think so. Not Aviva.
I wouldn't have expected them to.
I expect those to be Excel or EDI, but we'll check that. Okay, we've covered. So Stuart's added, do we have a timescale on when we will start sharing provider payment dates with top providers? So this is to do with the regular payments from providers, from the main providers.
Yeah, I would expect that we'll have the majority of that being able to publish within a couple of weeks. So we're just sort of reviewing it to make sure we haven't missed anything.
Chris Horn, you've asked when will the renewal report reflect all legacy commissions? So I'm not sure I understand the context of the question, Chris, but if there's something missing on that report that should be there, that you think should be there, then I would raise a query, and then someone who understands the report probably better than me can answer that for you. So the renewal report should include all renewals. One of the points I am aware of is I believe that advisor charges, though, don't appear on that renewal report, that they appear on the initial report, so you just need to check that. But I think we just need to double check that. But raise that query with the team, with the commission team.
But Paul Chidley, you've asked about going on to the new retention rates. Finance haven't put a block on it. It's really down to the individual advisor. So if you contact finance team, then they will put you on the new rate, as long as you appreciate that the charges will still show the old ones and you'll be part of the monthly reconciliation. So it's maybe been the way they've suggested to people they may or may not want to go onto the new rate, but it's definitely not a blanket ban on moving. It's really down to individual partners.
I've got a question here. When will advisors be able to speak direct to the payment teams? Good question. So the process for raising queries will, there's no intention at the moment to change that. So raising a query, the intention is that is going to stay. It's working. We're able to deliver a good service. We need to improve it, continue to improve it, but we do need to acknowledge that it has helped us deliver a better service to a wider proportion of the population. What I would say is that we, as part of this improving quality piece, we do need to get better at identifying when a call or a callback is required as a result of that query being raised. So we're not good enough at that at the moment. We think that an email or a note on the thing is on the form is fine. And often it is, but there are occasions that we need to get better at identifying when a callback does need to happen, and we get that, and that's one of the things that we're looking at improving. So hopefully that answers your question for now. Anyway, Stuart, I'm not sure. It will of course be reviewed, because we just need to make sure we're constantly improving that process. How many queries do we get per day, per week? I mean, I'm not sure how much you care about that, because that's our issue, but inside PS I think we get in between, depends on the day and what's going on, but we get in between about 25 and 50, so an average of about 35 a day. Across the whole business, it's close to sort of 150 a day, between 100 and 150. Again, depending on the day, we do have spikes. On the intrinsic side, we have spikes on certain days of the week because of the way the payment runs work. So, at the moment, it's a manageable situation. We definitely wouldn't have been able to get to the position we're in without automating part of it, though, and that's a key point. So hopefully that's answered your question.
It's also part of why the query system is working for us, that we can actually track this. We could tell before, or not easily, how many queries were raised under TP. What we do know is that we've got the same resource being used now as we used on TP. So queries were just normal business as usual. Payments missing, statements not arriving here, queries with providers. It's all feeling very much like the same as it was 12 months ago.
I've got quite a specific question from Neil. This is probably the last question I can see on the sheet that we'll be able to answer. So I have minus figures showing on my net and gross renewal commission and fees report. Please explain why. Neil, I think you'd need to raise this as a specific query, because without me or somebody looking at that report and looking at those individual entries, I couldn't answer or suggest what the reason is behind that. And so please, if you've got those individual queries, take a note of the policy numbers that relates to, raise a query, and I'm sure someone will be able to help you understand why those negatives are appearing. Okay, I think that's the last question. Just going to quickly look through, make sure we're not repeating anything.
I think that there's a good point to be made by Pauline's that, and I've just quoted that the jury's still out until this situation is fully rectified. I think that's a good summing up to a certain extent, because we need to get the ongoing charges fixed, and we need to get the reporting parts fixed. And Gordon Mackenzie's quote was exactly the same. Different words, but the sentiment was exactly the same. Payments have been made, but there's still these other points which are just distorting the whole vision of how the situation is in reality. So thanks for that, Paul.
Okay. If Andy Thompson can hear me, are there any points that you'd like to add on before we wrap up? Andy, I've unmuted you, so hopefully if you speak and you're dialed in, you should be able to speak.
Yeah, I think just a couple of things for me, really. I think that the first one is that I would like to thank the partners. I think you've worked incredibly well with us. You've been patient. You have given us the right feedback, and I think you've given us time to put this right, which I think, as you've seen today, we very much have done. Second one is, I think, Joe, you mentioned it earlier, but there are specific thanks that go to both the partners who were involved in the verification exercise and PAG, who have really held us to task, represented partners' interests superbly throughout all of this, but at the same time have supported and helped us to bring things to this stage of resolution. And I think what is important to me is that based on everything that you see today, partners are getting paid. They're getting paid on time, and they're getting paid the right amount of money. And that was the commitment. That's what we needed to do. And you've seen the kind of in-depth verification work that we've done to demonstrate that. The next stage of the journey, as Billy says, it isn't quite done. There's one or two things you still need to solve, and you've heard that from the guys. We won't stop on this until we fully get there. And of course, having closed off the verification work ourselves, then from an intrinsic point of view, we will want internal audit to go over that and to validate it. And it's only once we've got that that we will take this to board for final sign-off. So thank you very much. Thanks, Joe and Billy. Good job today. And thanks, guys, for taking the time to log on.
Thanks, Andy, and thanks everyone else for listening. Thanks for your questions. As I said, next steps are we have got a recording of this. We'll also take down the questions and write up some Q&A and share them with the people who've logged on today. And there'll be a communication sent out tomorrow to all advisors that will summarise these points that we've been making. So thanks everyone, and have a good day. Thank you.